Hello friends, this is Peter Kimwena once again, and it's my pleasure to come to you so that we can have a discussion, a continuous discussion on this issue of mental wellness. And today we are zeroing down on mental disorders so that all of us can have clear knowledge and good understanding of what mental disorders are about. So today I want us to find a suitable definition so that it can help us to open up our minds to know whether somebody has a disorder or not. And so, what is a mental disorder? A mental disorder is a clinically diagnosable condition whereby somebody has a significant amount of distress or impairment in terms of daily mental functioning. For example, somebody who has this level of distress can be suffering from issues like depression, issues like schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. Mental disorders are categorized into several groups, which I mentioned in the last episode, and I just want to revisit very briefly so that it lays the foundation for what we're about to discuss today. Mental disorders can include what we call common mental disorders, which are commonly diagnosable and you find it in many people. And these include depressive disorders, which commonly refers to mood changes, mood swings that people have, especially when they have issues in processing thoughts in their minds. When people undergo challenging situations and they have issues with processing and understanding what exactly is happening to them, tendencies are high. They get into mood changes, be it an adolescent, be it a mature person, or be it a child when they go through traumatic situations. The second one is under those common disorders include others like anxiety, where people have a lot of worries, a lot of fears. And then we also have somatic disorders which exhibit through bodily symptoms such as headaches, such as back pain, such as muscle aches and other things like that. We also talked about severe mental disorders, which, as the word goes, they are actually severe and will need clinical attention of a specialist, including psychosis. Psychosis is a condition where somebody hears voices. You hear voices, and sometimes you also see things which other people do not see, but you have an experience in your mind and it seems real to you when you're having this condition. You can also feel things on your skin, and sometimes people think it is witchcraft, but it is not. It's simply a disturbance of the mind which results in this condition called psychosis. We also have mood disorders where you have abnormal mood changes within very short times, and that is what we call severe mental disorders, the two of them, psychosis and mood disorders. Then we also have what we call child and adolescent mental disorders. These are mainly common among children and adolescents, and most of these include attention deficit disorder, sometimes also called attention and hyperactivity deficit disorder. So you have children and adolescents. The real intent is to try to catch the attention of a childminder or a parent or a significant person in the family or in the community, be it a teacher, be it a parent, be it a caretaker. They try to catch the attention of this person, and most of the time they do wrong things or things which ordinarily would be unacceptable, but they do them just as a way of attracting attention. And most of these issues are as a result of a disorder in their minds. Then we have another condition called intellectual development disability, which is actually a form of disability mostly associated with incomplete intellectual development, or development of the intellect which did not go as expected, and this affects the way the person thinks, the way the person approaches issues, and so it becomes a disorder. And lastly, we talked about oppositional defiant disorder, where a child, mostly an adolescent, is always against the norm. You find them always questioning things and fighting order and resisting instruction. Many people mistake it for indiscipline, but in reality it could be the presence of a mental disorder. Some of them have what you would call a conduct disorder. So it's just a way of just reminding ourselves that we have different types of disorders, and they can be categorized into groups which are different. And it is important for each of us to be able to understand, so that you are able to look objectively at what is happening to somebody and you're able to help. We also have other conditions which are as a result of neurological development. That is the problem of the brain. These are associated with the brain structure and the arrangement of the neurons and the health of the neurons of the brain of somebody. These include things like epilepsy and another condition called dementia. We also have disorders which are as a result of drug and substance abuse, and these ones are usually temporary or permanent, depending on the length of drug use and the intensity. It also depends on the presence or absence of the drug in the body, and also withdrawal. These include substances like alcohol, tobacco, and other illegal substances such as what the young people call ganja, hashish, and other common drugs that are abused by people around the world. Finally, we have a disorder which we call suicide ideation behavior. This is on the rise among young people mostly, where people commonly want to commit suicide. And it is actually a disorder, and it is something that needs treatment. Many people mistake, when you hear somebody wants to commit suicide, you hear people saying, let them die. If they want to die, let them die. It may not necessarily be because they want to. It could be because there is a problem with their mental faculties, and they do not have the best way to address the issues affecting them. So what are the factors affecting mental health? We have a number of factors which are responsible for the manifestation or development or otherwise in terms of mental health. We have factors which have to do with the body. We have factors which have to do with the mind. We have factors which have to do with the environment that the person has grown up in. And we also have factors to do with the background from which the person has come. And we would want to categorize them into 4 groups, which include 1, biological factors. These include chemical imbalances in the brain of a person. Sometimes due to chemical, mostly hormonal imbalances in the mind of somebody, you can end up being depressed because one hormone is being supplied in a level which is not supposed to be more than or less than what is required. And so most of the time you have to test somebody, for example, thyroid function, which affects the release of the hormones in the thyroid glands and also in the pituitary gland in the brain of somebody, which affects the way the hormones are balanced in the body. Some of these causes, part of these causes of biological causes, we also include genetics. These are issues in the genetic makeup of a person, which are actually transmitted along family lines through genetical makeup. We also have other causes like brain injury. When somebody has a trauma, for example, a fall, or you have an accident, and you develop a brain injury, it can lead to conditions associated with the mind and result in a mental disorder. We also have chronic illnesses which can also affect the brain function. And finally, we have medications. There are some medications that when you are given, when administered, they have an effect on the way the brain functions, not as the main reason for the application of the medicine, but as a side effect. And sometimes they can have adverse effects on the mind of somebody and cause somebody's thinking to be impaired or have challenges. The second thing that affects mental health of a person is what we call psychological factors. For example, poor self-esteem. I can't tell you how many people around the world have a negative concept about themselves, the way they estimate themselves. Self-esteem actually comes from the word estimate. So how you estimate yourself, your self-estimate, your self-esteem. Many people underestimate themselves. Some have a tendency to overestimate themselves, which clearly are not the subject of this discussion today. But we have many people who think less of themselves, who see themselves as not making it, who see themselves as having a disadvantage, and they view themselves in a negative light, and it is not very good for their psychological health. This results in negative thinking all the time. I cannot do this. I cannot achieve that. And even if they succeed, they think it was by accident, and they never give credit to themselves. And therefore, they always have issues in processing things around themselves. And they always, because of their negative way of seeing themselves, they are always out there trying to find evidence to prove what their mind has already told them. And truth be told, if you are looking for evidence to prove that you are not up to whatever you are thinking about, the world has enough reasons why you can't make it. It is important that people have a positive self-concept. The other one is what you call events in childhood. For example, people who have underwent violence when they were young. Let's say they had an abusive mother, an abusive father, or they were violated by a childminder or a caretaker or a neighbor or a significant family member. They will always have issues with their psychological approach to things. They'll always have, there's a high correlation between childhood trauma and negative mental health, having mental issues. The other one is emotional neglect. There are people whose parents were present with them. Whoever was supposed to take care of them was available in the house, but they were neglected emotionally. They were not present emotionally. For example, many fathers are present in the house, but very few are emotionally connected to their children. And so it affects how children carry themselves, and later on in life it can manifest as a mental disorder. Then probably traumatic events like the death of a parent or a significant other person within their environment can also bring in a lot of trauma and cause people to develop issues with their mental health. I know somebody somewhere in this country who has never actually recovered from the death of their parent. And 10 years later, 15 years later, they still have a traumatic feeling about it, and it has adversely affected how they process everything around them. So that when you study carefully what is going on in their lives, that person has never moved from the point that the parent actually died. It can be very traumatizing and very difficult for such people, and therefore causing what we call a mental disorder. We also have other factors which can result in mental disorders, which include family conflict. And this is such a high-level contributor, mostly affecting children and also women. Not to leave behind men who have been battered and abused in a family setup. And so they have developed mental disorders as a result. We also have poverty. Poverty has been known to cause so many problems in the mind of people affected by it. And you realize that due to poverty, people suffer a lot of issues like lack of food, like lack of peace in the family, like they live a difficult and a strenuous life, lack of proper housing, a lack of proper clothing, and generally lack of a decent life, which in the long run affects how people see themselves, affects how people process information, and generally causes people, especially the ones who cannot do anything about it, mostly women and children, and those who have no capacity or ability to rise above it, to suffer mostly physically, and it translates to the mental faculties of the people involved, leading to mental health disorders. We also have a related problem which can cause these mental disorders, which is unemployment. For example, many young people around the world, even in our country, in our villages, in the places we live, have no employment. People have no jobs. This affects how they earn their living. This affects how they live their lives, and generally how they carry themselves. And many of them are depressed. They feel like the government has oppressed them, and they feel like nobody cares. So they hate themselves, they hate everybody, and they do not know exactly what needs to be done to come out of it. And most of them develop suicidal ideation, most of them develop aggression against systems, most of them develop issues like, they feel like somebody has robbed them of something, and so they are constantly on a fight or flight mode, and it is not good for their mental faculties. This contributes to, by a big margin, to many mental health disorders, especially in the young people in the society. Another issue that has been noted to contribute to mental disorders is things like poor housing, which I have already mentioned earlier, and also issues which are beyond the control of the people involved, for example, infertility. This mostly affects men and women who are in childbearing age and have not been able to have children like everybody else. This goes up their mind. They try to understand what is wrong with me, what happened, what could be happening to me, could I be having a problem here, what exactly could I do to sort this out? And it leads to issues to do with mental health disorders. So these are factors which affect. They do not necessarily cause, but they actually affect the mental health of a person. Some of them could be causative agents as a result of depression and issues resulting from the factors I have mentioned, but most of them are known to affect.